you are very fortunate. And the reason why I say that is because your leadership team has decided to invest in you, right? Through these meetings you've been having and this session today and any additional sessions that they've had. These are investments to actually make you, let's say, more dangerous, right? Like a better, more professional, more highly skilled employee. And what I always tell people that I coach and that I mentor is, what is the one thing that your company can never take away from you, right? They can take away benefits, they can take away salary, they can change your role, they can take away people you manage, they can take many things away from you. But the one thing they can never take away from you is your skills, right? The things that you learn from the company, on the job, on these trainings. So I always encourage everybody, and that's why I'm excited for you today, because your company has invested in your training to really learn as much as you can, whatever company you're at, whatever situation you're at, because that's the one thing that you bring with you wherever you are. And no one can take that away from you, is your skill and your training in communication, your technical skills, all those skills, you own them. Nobody owns them. So really excited to be here today. My name is Joe Kwan, the Connection Counselor, and I teach how to unlock leadership through the power of connection. In this first hour, we're going to talk about how to connect better with people. Now, think about someone that you have a really good communication with, right? It's almost like they can read your mind. Could be a friend from, when you were younger, could be someone in your family, could be someone at work. It's almost like you can read each other's minds. Have you thought about that person? All right. Now, imagine if everyone that you met, everyone that you worked with, you could have that same level of communication and almost mind reading. How would that improve your life? Right? How much better would that make your life if you could really connect with someone like that? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about ways to do that. So to start off in the first hour, we're going to talk about changes to mindset, right? Because right now, most of us, we don't have that, right? There's some people that we connect well with, and there's others not so much. And there's others, it seems like we're speaking different languages. It's like, are we even speaking the same language here? I can't understand what they're saying. So we're going to talk about changes to mindset, because sometimes you need to change your mind in order to be able to see things differently. And then in the second half of the presentation, we're going to talk about tools that you can use to really improve your communication. So practical, kind of more tactical skills. How much am I responsible for communicating? So go ahead and answer in the chat, or if you're in the room, follow the direction to either stand up, sit down, raise one hand, or both. So the actions that I have are not random, okay? So think about, you're in a room and you're carrying some documents or some boxes, and they fall, right? And you need some help, right? Some people, you say, help me, I'm having trouble picking up these boxes. Some people will stay seated, right? That's like 50%. They're like, there's a box over there, you missed one, right? So they're not actually going to engage, right? They're going to do a little bit, but they're not actually going to physically, change. Some people will do a little bit more. They'll raise one hand. Maybe they'll get one box for you, right? But they're not really going to go all the way. Other people will raise both hands, right? That'll symbolize they'll get up and they'll grab some boxes as well, and they'll help you. And other people will actually say, oh my gosh, you look like you might hurt yourself. Let me grab those boxes for you. And they'll actually scoop up all the boxes and say, where are you going? And help you get to your destination. So the best communicators are more like those people that pick up all the boxes, right? It seems sort of counterintuitive, like 100%, right? Like when I first started out doing this, I thought, well, surely it's 50%, right? If I just pick the right words, then they should understand. I've done my part, right? Or maybe I do a little bit more, 51%. Well, let me try a little bit harder because maybe they're having some challenges. And if I'm feeling generous, let me do 80%. But seriously, why would I do 100%? It's not all my responsibility. They have to contribute too. And that's a very normal feeling. Now, the challenge with that is when we're talking about communication, right? For the person to understand, if they're not understanding, doing the same thing or only doing a little bit is not going to change that. You're still going to be stuck with lack of understanding. So the best communicators understand that if the other person is understanding, it's not their fault or your fault, right? But the point is, if you can assume responsibility to maybe change the way you say something, to tell them at a different time, then you'll have effective communication. So that's like the number one kind of challenge to communication. People think they should understand. I told them what to do. I was clear, right? But if they are actually trying and they don't understand, then you haven't really communicated. And that's where a lot of the challenges in communication come from, that maybe they're only willing to go 50% too, and they're not willing to share with you, hey, I didn't understand what you were saying, because they're embarrassed, or they want to seem like they know what's going on, right? But if everyone was taking more responsibility for saying, hey, like if I don't understand or you're not understanding, I need to work to make this happen, that's when you get that really wonderful communication. So we're going to talk about ways to get a little bit closer to that and other pieces of mindset. So there's a concept called meta communication. And what that means is what's being said, right? If you look at the iceberg, you see a bit on the top, and that's like the words, but then there's everything underneath, right? There's all the other things that are going on, how people are feeling, the context they're from, things about language, right? Maybe you speak a certain way, or you learned a different type of way of speaking when you were growing up. These are all things that can be very different. So what I want to do is show how it's not just the words, right? Sometimes we think if I just get the right words, it will be perfect. So what I want to do, Kinjal, if you could assist me for a second, we're going to go ahead and just read this very short script. I'm going to be orange, right? So I'm going to start and say, are you okay? And Kinjal, you're going to be apple. And the context is, you are not okay. Like, you're mad at me, right? I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to bring something to you. I didn't. Whatever the context is, you were really not mad at me. So you're going to say these words, but in your heart, you are not okay. Does that make sense, Kinjal? Yeah. All right. Are you ready? Yes. All right. Get your acting hat on. Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Are you sure? Because you don't seem fine.
I said I'm fine.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go make a sandwich. So who believes Kinjal was actually fine, right? There's tone in her voice, right? There's maybe body language, right? If you can see her on the screen, there's body language. And this happens to us a lot, right? People say, oh, I'm fine. It's fine. Everything's good, right? And if you choose to just believe the words because you're motivated to just move on, or you're very busy, you may miss or ignore the true meaning, which is, Kinjal and I, we have a relationship problem right now over whatever just happened, right? And by me going to make a sandwich, do you think that makes things better or worse, right? Versus figuring out how to address it. All right. Now, this one is another one that's maybe a little bit counterintuitive. So that picture of the man with the facts and he's falling, I like to call that facts fail fabulously. Raise your hand or give me a thumbs up in the chat room. How many of you have ever tried to convince a friend or a family member of something, and you brought the best evidence, but they still didn't agree with what you're saying, right? Raise your hand, give me a thumbs up on the chat, right? What's going on? You had the best facts, right? It's interesting, right? Especially at a data-driven company, we would think that facts are king, right? They're indisputable, right? And maybe if you're putting it into a computer, that's true, but human beings, as Stephen very aptly learned in his sales training, we are not computers, right? So what we actually do is, it sounds crazy, but what we actually do is we first decide how we feel, and then we pick and choose the facts that support what we want to believe, right? So there's really no amount of evidence that you can really bring to change someone's feeling. Until they change the feeling about how they feel about the thing or the person, they're not going to change. Yeah, so let me ask you, if you had a good friend, a best friend, and I told you to stop being friends with them because they're a bad person or they did this to me, would you automatically stop being friends with your best friend? What would it take for you to change your mind? Like, is there anything I could say to you to make you say, yeah, you're right. I'm casting them aside, 20 plus years of friendship. I'm throwing it out. They're a bad person. Is there anything I could say to change you?
You should say like he's talking bad about me or he's doing something bad to me.
He's doing something
Then
bad to you. Yeah.
yeah.
See, what Mohit said is very, very good, right? Because notice, he said their friend could do something bad to Mohit, right? I could say, oh, your friend was really mean to Kinjal or to Steven. And Mohit was going to be like, oh, well, maybe they were being jerks. I don't know, right? Because their feeling for their friend maybe is still stronger. But now they did something to like make Mohit look bad. Oh, now my feeling towards you is changing a little bit. Like, maybe you're not as good of a friend as I thought you were. And then what's going to happen in Mohit's mind is they're going to start to think about other things in the past, which they ignored, that they let go because they had such a strong feeling. And I'm going to say, I remember the time at this party where they didn't talk to me or, they weren't there for me. And now all the evidence of those things is going to change how they feel about the person, is going to be more impactful. So this is also a very significant mindset, because we can get people to kind of do or agree or understand almost anything if it's aligned with how they feel, right? If it's what they want to feel and believe, then we have a much easier path. So what I mean by that is, when you understand what's important to people and what they need, and maybe what they need, they're not getting it right now. If you can address that, then it's much easier to communicate with them with all the other things, because all the facts you bring, right? Stop being friends with that person, don't work with that person anymore, is not really going to matter as long as the feeling doesn't change. So how do we connect, right? In order to change people's feelings, we need to really connect with people. So this is something I want to share with you called the connection staircase. So there's different levels of connection. So if you look at the very bottom is rhetorical, right? So think about when you come into the office, or even when you come onto a call, what's the first thing you say to people, right? How you doing? How's your weekend? Right? A lot of times it's a rhetorical question. Like we're not really asking, right? Like we don't want to get into like a 10-minute conversation. It's polite, right? When you pass someone in the hallway or get on a call, it's polite just to say, oh, how are you doing? How's your weekend? And then you continue on. So rhetorical can get you higher, but it's really like just the base level. It's like entry level. It's basic, right? It's not really meant to do anything further, right? So the next thing we have on the level is what I call resume or CV, right? So these are details about yourself that are personal, but are kind of mass details, like where do you live? What kind of car do you drive? Right? Where'd you go to school? Right? So when you tell people those things, it's a little bit higher of a connection because, hey, maybe I live in that town, or I know someone who lives in that town, or maybe I went to that school too. Oh, maybe we were classmates, right? So by revealing more about yourself, that resume kind of level details, and it's not super personal yet, right? You are revealing a little bit more about who you are and what's important to you, and that can create a higher level of connection. So the next level we have is opinion, right? Now we're really getting to some level of connection. When you tell people what you think about something, right? Not the politically correct thing, but like what you really believe about something. And it doesn't have to be serious, right? It could just be like, I believe so-and-so is the best football player, right? Or the best town to live in is this, or here's the place that makes the best Indian food or pizza or whatever it is. Now you're revealing something a little bit more about yourself, and that can give you even more details, right? So let me ask someone in India, Disha. Disha, are you there? Give me a thumbs up or come off of mute if you're there, Disha.
Yes, Joe.
Okay, so let's try this. Say to me like a greeting, just like a morning greeting.
Hi, Joe. Good morning.
And I would probably say, hey, Disha, how are you doing? Right? So we haven't really connected much. Now, give me a resume detail. Give me something about yourself that you're willing to share, just that you might say in conversation.
Hey, Joe. Good morning. And I stay in Mumbai, India. And I have completed my graduation in 2016. And then I'll probably share about more details of where I live and what is my career progression till now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Did everyone catch that? Right? Everyone, think about all the wonderful details Disha just shared. Graduation, her career path, where she lives, Mumbai, right? So I may have some coworkers who also grew up or live in Mumbai, right? I work for a global organization. So now, or maybe I visited Mumbai on a business trip or to go to a friend's wedding. So now we have like more points of connection and we can start more of a conversation. Now, Disha, give me an opinion, right? Not like a scary, opinion, but just like an opinion, how you feel about an actor, a TV show, the weather. Give me an opinion about how you feel about something.
The weather is really hot today. It's kind of humid, and I can't wait for the rainy or the monsoon seasons to start over.
Great. Now, this can go two ways, right? I can agree with Disha. I can say, yeah, I feel exactly the same way. Or, and this is not a bad thing, I can give a different point of view. I can say, you know what? I kind of like this weather. I grew up in Alaska, right? And I really enjoy all this warmth. So I have a different perspective, right? And then Disha, what would you say if I told you I grew up in Alaska? What would you ask me after that?
Um, I think I would say that maybe you're used to this kind of weather. That is the reason you're saying that. But um, I personally don't like this kind of weather.
Yeah,
I prefer a pleasant one.
there we go. So now we're really talking about something, right? We've gone beyond like, hey, how are you doing? How was your weekend? Right? And it's just the weather, but because Disha gave her opinion and I gave an opinion back, we're sort of connecting at a higher, deeper level. Now, thanks, Disha, so much. So I'm not going to ask Disha for the next two levels because I wrote a line here because this gets a little bit more personal. So true colors, right? What that means is, we talk about authenticity a lot these days. this is the thing that you like really, really believe and makes you a little bit vulnerable, right? Because it really shows who you truly are. And maybe you're not in an environment where that's accepted or safe to share those sorts of things, right? However, when you do share true colors and it's in a good environment and other people there are receptive, that creates such a stronger connection, right? So it could be something, I'm just making up some examples here. It could be your views on parenting, right? It could be your views on the best way to lead a team, right? Maybe it's different than the way things are being done in your current or previous organization. And you're really sharing with someone like, this is something that's like really, I feel strongly about, right? And that allows people to really connect with you on a deeper level, right? Because you're showing who you truly are. It's not just, oh, I think the Yankees are better. No, the Mets are better, right? It's not something, just an opinion. It's like you truly, this is part of who you are. This is what you believe. And the final one, confession, right? So this is the one that creates the highest level of connection. And I don't expect you to see this at work typically, or maybe even in your home life. This is very rare, right? This is your deepest, darkest feelings and secrets, right? Maybe it comes out at 2 a.m. in the morning. You've had too much to drink, you're tired, and then you say something like, oh, you confess. It doesn't have to be like a crime thing, right? But you confess like something that's really kind of scary. And the thing about confession is the person you tell can use it against you, right? It doesn't have to be like a criminal thing, but it's like something that's like very, very, very personal, right? And can actually be used against you. And it's so scary. So we don't normally share this unless we absolutely trust the person, or for whatever reason, we're so tired and vulnerable, we don't realize, and it just kind of slips out. Now, imagine you're with a coworker, you're on a business trip, and they share with you something so confessional, right? Something happened to them when they were younger, or they're having some sort of health problem with their family, like something that normally doesn't come up in polite conversation. How much more connected would that make you feel with that person? Because they entrusted you with that, something that can be used against them, something that's embarrassing, maybe something that could get them fired, hopefully not, right? How much closer would you feel with that person, right? So the connection staircase is just to illustrate that there are different levels of the way we communicate with people, and each level is going to create a different sort of connection. Now, it's not meant for you to go 1, 2, 3, like start at the lowest level and go up. Like you can jump into different levels, you can go up and down, you can skip levels. But it's to understand why when you say to someone, hey, how was your weekend? Right? To kind of understand that like maybe that leads to a deeper conversation, but maybe not, because it's not at a higher level of connection. And to see when people are telling you things and offering opinions and you feel more engaged in the conversation, that's why this is going on. Great question. Great question, Chitra. Thank you so much for that. And here's the thing, people definitely have a challenge with this. Everyone does. I do as well, right? Because you're in a professional environment, right? So you're not going to say like necessarily like, oh, I had too much to drink over the weekend, or, I got into a fight, with my spouse, and that's why I have this black eye or something, right? Like you're not necessarily, you're not necessarily going to want to share that with your boss or with your coworkers. Maybe you do, I don't know, right? But it's different, right? Versus your college friend or your neighbor, right? You're much more comfortable. So what I would share with you is that's exactly right, Chitra. There's like professional judgment, and you all have that, right? I don't have to teach you professional judgment. You all have an inner compass and sense of what's appropriate. However, what I will share with you is the principles still operate regardless of the context. So I know a lot of people who've been trained and still do this today. They do not share anything about themselves with their coworkers. They're like robots. They're like resumes. There is no detail about them which is interesting, unique, or them. And how connected do you think people will feel with you if all they know is your name, your ID badge number, and your role, right? They can't connect with you. In fact, what they're more likely to do is forget you versus, oh, you know, I'm the person who, like, for instance, this is not a tie. Everyone thinks it's a tie. It's a Harry Potter lanyard because we love Orlando and Harry Potter. We went there before COVID. I think we went there like, I'm a little embarrassed, like 10 years in a row. We went to Orlando for our vacation, right? So now I've shared a personal detail about myself that whether you like Harry Potter or not, whether you've been to Orlando or not, it's something that you'll remember about me. You'll always remember this yellow thing, right? But what if I came just in a white shirt, right? Just glasses, shaved head, look like just any other Asian guy, right? How likely are you to remember me versus the next person you have who's wearing a white shirt, glasses, right? So it's those details, it's those distinctive things about ourselves that create the connection. Think of them as hooks, right? It allows people to hook on to who you are and to remember you and to get some feeling towards you, right? Because it's about how people feel about us that we were learning before. So excellent question. I'm not encouraging everyone to go out and confess all their crimes to their coworkers. Definitely don't do that. Kinja will get mad at me, right? But it's about understanding that if people are not connecting with you, maybe it's because you are not giving them anything to connect with, right? It's not necessarily because people are unfriendly or unkind, and those people exist too, right? I'm not saying it's all your fault, but I'm saying the more you contribute, right? 100%, remember? The more you contribute, the more you share personally about yourself, the easier it is for someone to hook onto that, to have a feeling about you. They don't have to agree, right? The worst thing in communication is for people not to care about you. I don't care what Vishva says. I don't care, right? You can say whatever you want. I don't care. That is the worst place you can be in terms of communication. People have to care about you. They don't have to agree with you, but they have to care what you say. They have to care that you exist as a person in their sort of workspace. So now we're going to talk about some roadblocks, right? I've been talking a lot about things that kind of help. And now I want to talk about some things that that don't help so much. So what I would love for you to do, and I'm going to interrupt you on purpose. So please don't be mad at me. But this is just to demonstrate. So what I would love for you to do is talk about your favorite vacation place or your dream vacation. So something wonderful that really, it's so amazing. So just go ahead and talk to me about that.
So when I was in India, I visited like Amritsar, Punjab. Like there's one
Wait. Where were you again?
in India, Amritsar, Punjab.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So yeah, so like there's Wagah border over there. There's Jallianwala Bagh. It has a lot of history.
Wait, hold on. I'm getting a phone call. I'm getting a notification. Hold on.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Where were we? I'm so sorry. Where were we? You were saying?
So I was saying that like it has a lot of history, like about India and like how
I know a lot about Indian history. I studied Indian history in college. Let me tell you about. Okay, so everyone give her a round of applause because I was being very rude to her. So generally when people interrupt us, it does two things. One, it stops us from sharing maybe just the thing that we needed to share, right? And two, sometimes it makes us feel kind of bad, right? It's like, hey, I'm still talking, right? Now, I want to add that there's a cultural component, okay? So if you just think about the US. People in New York on the East Coast, we interrupt much more often. That's our style, right? We jump in, we interrupt, and it's maybe not considered as rude as if you're in California, where they have a much slower, laid back pace, and it would be considered odd or rude to interrupt, right? So you're going to have the Indian cultural component, you're going to have the US cultural component, you're going to have sort of regional components, right? So again, the art, like Stephen brought our attention to, right? So it's not just never interrupt. It's not interrupt after 5 seconds, right? Who are you talking to? How often do they interrupt? Because that's a good sign as to what's an acceptable level of interruption with them, right? Because what'll happen is, here's something interesting. If you're talking to someone who interrupts a lot and you don't interrupt, guess what? They think you have nothing to say. They want you to interrupt because that's what they would do. So if your culture, if your set point is to just be waiting and not interrupt, then they're going to be like, well, I gave you a chance to talk, but you didn't tell me anything. So I thought you had nothing to share. And you're going to think very justifiably, well, no, you actually didn't give me a chance to talk. You just kept on interrupting me. Every time I tried to tell you something, you interrupted me, right? So again, it's this 100% kind of concept. It's to understand that, like, wait a second. Normally, I don't interrupt. But with this guy or gal, they expect me to interrupt. So for me to communicate, I have to flex my style a little bit, right? And I have to interrupt them. Now, I don't have to go around interrupting everyone, interrupting my parents, interrupting my kids, because maybe that's going to be horribly just not work well, right? But if I understand that the person I'm talking to expects me to interrupt, then I should interrupt more. If they expect me to wait and I'm an interrupting person, this is my problem. Sometimes I have to just shut up, right? Say, Joe, because I interview people on podcasts, right? So let's say you're interviewing like a CEO and they're delivering this wonderful information. Nobody's there to hear me talk about diversity or leadership or executive presence. They want to hear what the CEO has to say. Joe, let them talk, because they could share something amazing for the audience that they would not get anywhere else. And that's where the value is, right? So interrupting and understanding the right level of interrupting, it makes a big difference. All right, negating. So let me see if I can grab one of our colleagues in India. Let's see. Bindal, are you there?
Hey, yes, it's Bindal.
Yeah. Bindal. All right, great. Thank you so much. So I want you to share with me something you find challenging, right? It could be a sport that's hard for you to play. It could be a skill like singing or public speaking. It could be, I don't know, riding a bike in a crowded area, just anything that, you find a little bit difficult. It doesn't have to be horrible, but just something that doesn't come easily to you. So just for a couple moments, if you could share with us, and I will be, again, a little bit rude. I will negate what you say.
So very hard for me it's to choose my profession, right? Yes. So I was basically an IT person and looking for a coding company and software development, and somehow I switched into the management and other things. So yes, that's very difficult for me in previous years.
Wait a second, Bindal. You're such a smart. You're telling me that was difficult for you. You're such a smart guy, and you have all these resources. Surely that can't be difficult.
Yeah. So so basically that's very difficult for me to understand the other things which I never know that. Yes.
Come on, Bindal. It's just a mindset thing. It's not really a big problem. I mean, people make these decisions all the time. I don't understand what kind of problem you're having here.
Every person has a different problem, so that's a very big problem for me.
Bindal, I think if you think about it, it really isn't as big of a problem as you think it is. All right, everyone give Bindal a round of applause and some claps, because I was very, very rude to him. My apologies, Bindal. All right, so Bindal, how did that feel when I basically told you you don't feel the way you feel?
Mm, I was being trying to be nice with you.
Yeah, yeah, you were trying to be nice with me, but
Yes. Ah,
right? I mean, that's Bindle's experience is the experience we all have, right? People try to tell us how we should feel. Why? Because I feel that way, or I feel Bindle should feel that way. So now I'm trying to tell him, no, you should feel the way I feel, not the way you feel. And that isn't received well. And that puts barriers up to communication. But we do that all the time at work, right? How often will someone come to you and say, hey, this is really difficult? And we're trying to be helpful, but we say something like, oh, it's not hard. Let me show you how to do it. Right? Think about how you would feel versus someone saying, oh, yeah, I could see how that was really hard. And if it's true, you could say, yeah, it was so hard for me too when I was starting out. So I totally get it. Let me show you a couple tips and tricks to make it easier for you. Which person would you rather work with, Bindle? The first one who told you it's not hard and just fixed it for you, or the second person?
yes. Who made my life very easy in this stuff. Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So whenever we negate, when we deny the existence of someone's experience or feeling, even when we're being helpful, right? Because what happens is we forget as we become more skilled and excellent and dangerous, we forget in a way all the challenges and the levels that we had to go through, right? And that's normal to forget it. But if you expect other people to feel the way you feel all the time and try to make them feel that way, you're going to have a very difficult time communicating or finding people who want to work with you more than once. So thanks, Bindle. So the last one is switch tracking. And what this means is, have you ever given someone a piece of criticism, right? And you say, oh, you showed up late for the meeting, right? And then their response to you is to now criticize you and say, well, you didn't send out the meeting invitation early enough, right? And then you say, yeah, but I really need you to show up on time. Well, if you need me to show up on time, maybe when you saw me at lunch the other day, you could have reminded me that we had this very important meeting. I'm embarrassed that I was late, right? So switch tracking means when your reaction to someone's feedback, even when they're trying to be helpful to you, is to get kind of defensive, right? And then change the subject and maybe criticize them, right? And notice how you end up going in a circle. It doesn't actually resolve anything, right? We're not really talking about you getting on time, and we're not talking about me being more effective at planning meetings and getting people to the meetings. You're talking about your agenda. I'm talking about my agenda, and they never meet because we keep switching. Switch tracking is like, like on a train, there's a track and you pull the lever and the train goes this way or it goes that way, right? That's what this term, this metaphor is. It's switch tracking, right? So the antidote for switch tracking is to stay with one topic at a time. It's very difficult, right? We're all smart. We see other problems, we see other issues, and it's easy for us to want to jump to the other thing, especially if we're feeling a little attacked, right? But it doesn't work, right? Because then they will want to switch back to their thing, right? So luckily, there is a superpower, an antidote for interrupting, negating, and switch tracking. And it is curiosity, right? When we are curious, right, what happens? We don't interrupt, right? We listen. And when we do interrupt, it's because we have a natural question to ask, not because we want to say something, right? When we're curious, we don't negate. We don't say, Bindle, you shouldn't feel that that's hard. It's easy for someone as smart as you. You're a smart guy. I say, well, I'm surprised, Bindle, that was challenging. Tell me, why was it so challenging for you? Right? I want to understand because I'm a little surprised, but I get it. It was really hard for you. I believe you. Why was that so difficult? Share with me some more details so I can understand a little bit better what happened, right? And switch tracking. I didn't arrive on time, right? And then I say, oh, I'm so sorry, what was the impact on the meeting? Have I been doing this more often and I didn't even realize it was going on? Have other people been doing this? I mean, how are your meetings going? Right? Is this negatively impacting your meeting, or is it just, something like a habit that you want all your team members to have? Right? And really understand. Because now that you're curious, you're getting more information and you can respond better. You can say, oh, okay, I understand why. This is what I'm going to do to make it better, versus saying, well, you should just send out the invitation earlier on time if you expect people to be here. All right, so I'm going to close with one last concept, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break and come back, and we're going to talk about tools. So this will be the, not like one part is more fun, but we're going to get more strategic and like actually pull out some tools from the toolbox. The last concept I want to share is timing. I'm going to share an interesting story. I was at IKEA, right? I think everyone kind of knows IKEA, it's a huge furniture store, right? Warehouse. And I'm walking through with my wife, and she says to me, hey, Joe, can we get a couch? I think we need a new couch. And I said to her, yeah, sure, let's get a couch. And my wife looked at me like I was crazy. She was like, well, I asked you last week and you didn't look happy about getting a couch. You looked like you didn't want to spend the money. And that's probably how I looked, right? So she was like, why did you change your mind? And I said, I don't know. That was a week ago. I feel differently today, right? And jokingly, my advice is like, if you want something, just keep asking me until I say yes, because on a certain day, I may change my mind, right? And you see this like in movies, right? When someone's trying to like, get something from someone, they like take them to their favorite restaurant or they cook them their favorite meal. And then they say, oh, can we do this, right? Because it's the timing of the thing, right? Maybe if I'm really stressed and I got home from work and my boss is yelling at me and then someone says to me, hey, can we buy this thing? And I'm worried about getting fired. Maybe my reaction is going to be a little bit different versus I just got my bonus, got a great performance review, and my parents sent me a really generous birthday gift or something. And now I'm just like, hey, am I a different person? No, I'm not a different person, but the timing of it can make a difference. And there's an interesting story real quickly before we go on break in Israel, where they looked at the sentencing of people who were trying to get probation. And the sentencing was fairly consistent, right? However, it changed depending on the time of day. So people got more lenient rulings in the morning, very morning, in the early afternoon. Why do you think they got better results at those times with equal cases, right? And the answer is hunger, right? The judge in the morning, they had just eaten breakfast, feeling pretty good. Yes, you can go, right? Or I'll give you less years. After lunch, just had a nice lunch. I feel good, right? But the further, right, they got away from lunch or breakfast, the worse your sentencing got, the worse the results got. Even looking at similar cases, right? Like, the experimenters, leveled it for similar cases. So even something as simple as hunger and how you're feeling can make a difference. And I had a coworker who did something very smart. We had a very difficult partner we worked for. He would call the admin or the secretary before he ever went into the office or lion's den. He would say, how's she doing today? How's she doing right now? And then if they said stormy clouds, he would wait, right? If he could wait, he would wait an hour. He would wait 2 hours. He'd wait till the next day. He would still get the work done, but he was not going to walk into a situation where the boss is mad at someone else and then you show up with your problem. That's not going to end well, right? So timing is another mindset, right? We often think that, if we just say it the right way, everyone should receive it the right way. Timing is key as well. And even salespeople know that, right? There's a certain part of the cycle where people have budgets and they need to spend money. Well, if you're talking to them during that time versus when they haven't got their budget approved, you're going to have a very different conversation. Now we're going to talk about some communication tools, right? We talked about a lot of problems. We talked a lot about concepts, but what do we actually do, right? Like, how do we actually make the communication happens. So I'm going to share with you 5 tools that can really help. And they're simple tools. They're easy to understand. The challenge is in making it a habit to implement them and maybe changing some of our usual habits to try different ways of doing things. So the first thing I want to talk about is using positive words instead of negative words. So there's a funny story, right? Like, I think it's just like on the internet, right? There's a woman and she asked her husband, begged him, please stop spending so much time at work, right? Asked him that over and over for days, for weeks. And one day he comes home and he's so proud of himself. And he says, honey, I listened to what you're saying and I agree. I should stop spending so much time at work. I just joined a golf club, right? So how do you think she's going to feel? Now he's going to spend time at work and also spend time playing golf with his friends and spend even less time at home. So what happened here, right? What happened was, and I'm not blaming her, I'm saying in terms of the communication, she told him what not to do, right? What to stop doing, and didn't specify what he should do, right? It was stop instead of go. So that leaves a lot of room for interpretation. There's plenty of ways I can stop doing something, but there's maybe only one way I can go and I can do the thing that you're asking me to do. All right, so our next tool that we're going to use is called yes and. Yes and is something that came out of improv comedy. In just a second, we're going to do a 2-minute drill. New Jersey is going to do it in New Jersey. You're going to go around the table for 2 minutes and we'll just watch because it'll be difficult to do it in India, right? So all of us in India and myself will watch the folks in New Jersey. So what I want you to do is notice what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the best place to go order lunch, right? This happens in the office all the time. Like, where should we order lunch and what sort of food, right? So what happens a lot is I'll say, oh, I really want Thai food. I love Thai food, right? And then Kinja will say, I don't like the flavor profile of Thai food. I don't like basil. Let's get Chinese. And then Sid will say, nah, I just had Chinese yesterday. No, not Chinese. Can't do it. Let's have, Indian food. And then Steven will say, no, I have to work out later today. And, my stomach will get upset if I have something too spicy. Let's get, sandwiches or pasta or something a little bit lighter, right? So that's like a normal conversation. No, I don't think so. But, a lot of negative kind of words. So what I want to do for the next 2 minutes, and who has the ball? Hold up the ball. Okay, so you're going to start and you're going to go to the right. So the next person after you talk is going to go to the right, to your right-hand side. And you're going to say, this is where I want to go, or this is what I think we should order. And then the person to your right will give their opinion. Now, there's only one rule. You cannot use the words no or but. It's going to be very difficult. Trust me, it's very difficult to not say no or but when you give your opinion, which is different. So I want you to say yes and. So I want you to go around and I'm going to start the timer and we'll just go until the 2 minutes are up and just keep on going around giving different suggestions, but you have to use yes and. On your marks, get set, and person with the ball, you're going to start. Ready and go.
Let's order. Done.
Yes, and let's consider some food from that geographical area, such as Greek food.
Yeah, it sounds great. Let's also get some hamburgers going.
Yes, I think that sounds like a plan, and let's also do some vegetarian.
Yes, and we have a meat for that too.
Yes, and I'm down for a barbecue.
Yeah, we should also think about some drinks.
Yes, and we can also get some time.
Listen, if we have that food during the meeting, then we can not have 2 words per stove.
And yes, today I would like to have some Indian.
Yes, I would definitely like to include kosher food into it.
Yes, we can have Peruvian food as well.
Yes, and I think I'm good with anything.
Yeah, like tourist visits as well.
Yes, and the company will pay for all this food.
All right. Great, great, great. Thank you so much. I think we did a loop of the room, right? All right. So let's get a volunteer from the room. Toss the ball. How did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, people were considerable, like, so it felt good, yeah. Like, considering, your opinion and also, adding suggestion, like what they would like to know. So during that, you got to know that, what's there in their mind.
Yeah. Now be honest without naming anyone. Were there people who messed up and said but or no by accident in the room?
I don't think so. No.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Because it's
clear. Yes, and I'm right.
Was
Yeah.
there anyone in the room? Raise your hand if you had to catch yourself from saying no or but or contradicting. Wow. Pretty impressive, right? You follow directions really well. So it can be really difficult to get out of the mode of contradicting people, right? I'm a lawyer by training. I mean, if you need to argue with someone, I'm there. I'm ready to argue, right? It's much more difficult to agree with people, right? Even agreeing just to share some additional detail, we're trained, right? To say no, because it's protective, right? We think it protects us, and it does protect us. But what it also does is it pushes people away, right? Versus if we allow, and by saying yes, we're not saying like, I agree. We're saying, I see you. We're saying, I value your opinion. I have a different opinion and I want to share it with you, and I hope you value mine, right? So that creates a different team dynamic. And here's a warning. I don't want you to leave this meeting and start saying yes and to everyone. That's not the point. That's weird. But the point is to catch yourself, right? Remember we talked about negating and how that stopped connection, right? You don't have to negate someone else to be yourself, right? You can say, oh, I see that. However, don't even say however. Say, oh, I see that. Have you thought about this as well? Or, that's interesting. One thing that I'm concerned about with that is, right? So I haven't punched them in the face. I haven't told them they're wrong. I haven't told them that their feeling is stupid. You would never say that out loud because you're all professionals, but you receive it that way sometimes, right? You receive that kind of negative energy from people, even though they don't intend it, right? So this is really, really an important concept. If you can get more into, let's call it a mindset, it's a yes and mindset, you'll see your collaboration increase, like, I'm exaggerating, but like 100-fold, right? Because people will feel open. What happens when you give a suggestion and someone negates it? How do you react? How much more likely are you to give that person another suggestion? I see you shaking your head, Mito. How do you feel?
So if I have anything to suggest next time, I will not go to that person, most likely will not go to that person next time.
Well, and here's a funny thing. What if it's your boss who's saying no, and your suggestion is going to save your boss?
Yeah, but in that case, I think, I don't know, that will be a tough call,
Exactly. And it shouldn't be a tough call, right? You should always want to give the information that's going to help the team, help the company, help your boss. But if every time you help, you get slapped in the face, like figuratively, right? Not, literally, you're gonna be glad when they make a mistake and you could have helped them, and you're just gonna watch. You're gonna grab some popcorn and you're gonna watch them destroy themselves, right? Because they would not recognize your contribution, right? So yes, and for people who are working for someone as well as for managers, it's a really important like teaming and collaboration sort of concept.
I actually have a question.
Sure.
So suppose you are working of a team of two people, and one of them is very extrovert and communicating well and try to communicate with the other person, but the other person maybe he or she is not an introvert person, and at one point you are feeling that you are not able to communicate well, which eventually will help the project to go like you need to communicate, right? So in that situation, how do you handle, like how do you keep the conversation going where one is not interested in communicating with the other?
Yeah, great question. And believe it or not, I am an introvert, right? I put on my extrovert hat for presenting, but sometimes I just want to be left alone, right? So it can be challenging for people who aren't constantly talking and presenting and sharing when they're dealing with someone else who it's much more natural for them. So what I would say to that, and that's a great question. What was your name again?
Mona Lisa?
Okay, Mona Lisa. What I would say to that is you have to figure out a way to leverage your strengths in the situation, right? So maybe it's not the right idea for you to take public speaking and try to out-talk this person, right? Maybe that's not the way. Could be for some people. For other people, it could be maybe you're really good at presenting compelling visual evidence. Maybe you're really compelling at sending up a follow-up email which integrates all the ideas and puts your special stamp on it and says, this is what I have learned from the meeting, and this is what I think we should do, right? So it's about finding a way to leverage your strengths, which we all have strengths. Like the only strength is not like speaking out loud in a room. That's the most visible strength, but it's not the best strength or the only strength, right? So it's to leverage what you can do and what's strong in a way that will help the team, will help the boss, help the organization. That's the definition of executive presence, right? It's about doing things in a way that are going to help success happen for everyone. It's not just dressing the best, talking the best, or being the tallest or best looking person, although that certainly helps, right? But I don't have those advantages. So I have to find other ways to be effective.
How to make sure like we get equal contribution in that discussion or in that project? How to make that lend the hand?
That is a great detail, right? So let me tell you a story. There was a doctor who noticed that his female residents, right? You all know residency, right? In the US, before you become a doctor, you have to do residency, right? It's training. You're like an apprentice. And part of how you're evaluated is answering questions, raising your hand, giving your opinion as to what's going on medically. So the trainer will say, what do you think? Raise your hand. This is the disease. This is the symptoms, right? And what the doctor noticed was his female residents who had just as good grades, were just as smart, just as skilled, were losing points because they weren't volunteering, they weren't raising their hand and addressing it. So there's two paths you can take. One path is to criticize them and say, hey, you need to do this more. If you want a good grade, you need to raise your hand more, right? And that can be effective. But what this doctor did is so much smarter and so much more useful. They called on people, right? So if you have a room full of 5 female and 5 male doctors in training, residents, you say, Patricia, what do you think? Patricia talks. John, what do you think? Sally, what do you think? Priya, what do you think? Jamal, what do you think? Joe, what do you think? Right? Notice how, I don't know if the doctor was a he or a she, created a structure for participation. right? That took out the extroverted, aggressive, volunteering element. And wouldn't you know it, the female doctors had just as good advice, just as good analysis, maybe even better, if we're honest. So what you can do as managers, right? Because you can't do this if you're like the lowest person on the team, you can suggest it, right? But if you're the manager, you can create structures for equal participation where the expectation is everyone brings one suggestion. Everyone sends one email before with their best suggestion. Everyone's going to get 5 minutes to talk. And guess what? Extroverted person, when your 5 minutes is up, I'm muting you. You're done, right? Isn't that beautiful? Right? And they don't feel bad because the next person's getting muted too after 5 minutes. It's not personal. We just need to hear from everyone. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is called verbal mirroring. So anyone like Star Wars, give me a thumbs up or raise your hand if you like Star Wars. All right. This is the closest thing I've ever seen to an actual Jedi mind trick, right? You know what I'm referring to? Jedi mind trick when the stormtroopers are looking for the droids and then, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi says, these are not the droids you're looking for. And then they say, these are not the droids we're looking for, right? So this is actually the closest thing to a Jedi mind trick that I've ever seen. And I learned this when I was reading a book on negotiation by Chris Voss. He's a FBI hostage negotiator. He's got a masterclass, you know, in that really slick training series, Masterclass, a great book called Never Split the Difference. And so this is actually very simple and more effective than you think it would be. So the way this works is, and it's all about understanding the need and the why, right? It's not about tricking people. So I could say to someone, you know, I need you to do this, right? And maybe it makes no sense to them at all, but they don't understand why, right? So the way the Jedi mind trick works, or the verbal mirroring works, is you repeat like the last 2 or 3 words or the most relevant phrase that they said in the request, and you kind of ask it as a question. So you say, go to the printer today? And then you just be quiet and you be silent. And then you let them fill in and give additional details as to what they really want and what's important. And it's very subtle and it almost seems like silly, like, hey, don't play games with me, you know, just ask me a question. But this actually works because it gives the person the space to share what they need in a very natural way. It feels natural at first, but I guarantee you, I do this all the time. No one has ever said, don't Jedi mind trick me, Joe. I know what you're doing. Like, you could do it to me tomorrow and I wouldn't even notice because it's just so natural. So let's throw the ball. Let's give an example.
I'm asking people who want the trick.
No, you don't ask, you just throw the ball. just make sure they're awake and then throw the ball. You don't want to hurt them.
Or don't be awake.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of company this is. All right, so who has the ball?
Mona Lisa.
Mona Lisa. Okay. So Mona Lisa, make like a request to me that you might ask someone to do at work, you know, like a task that you might ask them to do.
Hey, on Friday, I will be out of office in the first half of the day. Can you be my backup? So if anything urgent comes up, you can just reply on the email that I will be back in the second half of the day and I will respond back.
Your backup?
Yeah, like, you know, back me up when I'm not there.
So when you're not there?
Yeah, so I will be out of office, I said, right?
Okay. And you said email reply?
Yes, in case anything urgent comes up.
So urgent things.
Yeah, just to acknowledge that I'm out of office, and when I will be back, I will just get back to them. It's just to acknowledge
in absence of me.
Okay, great. I think I can do that. Thanks.
Perfect.
Right. So notice how additional details come out, right? What she really cares about is the acknowledging, right? Because what she shared first is like kind of a technical thing, right? Like give an email, reply, right? And then you can also share different details about what's urgent, right? So maybe I don't understand what's urgent, and I can be like, urgent? What's urgent? Because your definition of urgent may be different than my definition. And then I don't tell you something that's urgent, and then you get mad at me, right? Because I didn't understand, right? So the more detail we can get from people, when we don't understand, right? If it's clear, you don't have to ask, right? But if it's something difficult or complicated or you don't understand, doing this sort of verbal mirroring can give them the chance to share additional details. So I would recommend like you practice this like at home, right? Like in a safe environment, right? Like whereas, like a parent might say, like, let's say you're a kid and your parent says, clean your room. And I say, clean my room? Yeah, I want you to clean your room now. And then you say, clean it right now? And then they could say, yeah, because we're leaving in 5 minutes and we're going to be late. Or they could say, well, you don't have to clean it right now, but make sure you clean it before the next hour because so-and-so is coming over, right? So notice how by asking that question, we're learning things that we could not otherwise know. And we're allowing the person to share what they really need and additional details versus, I don't want to clean it now, I'm busy, right? Whereas if you say, well, if you need to clean it now, so we're on time for dinner and we're going to my favorite restaurant, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm cleaning it right now, right? So this verbal mirroring by sort of asking that additional kind of, and it's like sincere, it's like, you really don't understand, it's like, maybe the email was a little bit a tough example because, it's fairly straightforward, but there could be like more complicated tasks that someone asks you to do with lots of different steps and you're really not sure, what exactly they mean. And by doing this, it's a lot easier to get the details and saying, well, what do you need? Or give me a checklist, or I'm going to need a protocol for you to do. Because that's not as helpful. You really just want to know what's really important to them and get that piece right. So it's easier for you and it's also better for them. They're going to respond better. All right. So we're going to move on to our fourth one, which is metaphor magic. All right. So let's have one of our folks in India participate. So Lakesh, tell me what your job is. What is your role?
I'm a data migration engineer in the organization.
Okay. So data migration engineer. Now, everyone in LK, most of the people on this call, let's just say, probably understand what that means. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. What happens when you go to a party, let's say a holiday party or a family event, and you say data migration engineer? What percentage of people do you think actually understand what that is?
Actually, there are lots of my friends and some relatives who are in a technical field. They understand, and the lots of person also don't understand the meaning of the data migration engineer.
Yeah.
So I just try to elaborate those things to them.
Great. Well, you're going exactly where we want to go, right?
Yes.
Helping the people understand who don't.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
There's two ways you can explain it to them, right? There's one way where you can just give them more and more details, like this is what I do in the morning, and this is the type of software I deal with, and blah, blah, blah. And I can tell you a lot of people who maybe aren't as technical, it will be very difficult for them.
Yes, right.
To gain more understanding. So we're going to share an easier way to do this. I call it metaphor magic, right? Everyone knows that Forrest Gump says, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right? So the box of chocolates is a metaphor for variety and surprise, and life is just spontaneous, right? You cannot predict life. So that's a lot easier to say life is like a box of chocolates than to say life is so unpredictable because of X, Y, and Z, right? And another metaphor we use a lot is the corporate ladder, right? You're climbing the ladder. And then sometimes when people get stuck, they say, we're on a hamster wheel, right? I keep running harder and working harder, but I'm not going anywhere. It's like I'm on a hamster wheel, right? So those are two metaphors. Now, Lokesh, what metaphor could you share which would explain what your job is? What is the metaphor you could come up with for migration? And I'll give you an example first from myself, so I'll be clear.
Yes, sure.
So what I do is I'm a privacy attorney. That doesn't mean anything to you, right? But if I say I'm like a marriage counselor between global IT systems and privacy laws, and I make them work well together so they don't get mad at each other, right? That's my metaphor. I'm like a marriage counselor between IT systems and regulations or privacy laws. Now, you don't have to understand IT systems. You don't have to understand privacy laws in detail, but you understand I just help the two connect, right? So what would you say is a metaphor you could use to describe data migration engineer?
Right. Actually, as there are lots of people in the world who are using the mobile, which is also a latest technology, and we also use some kind of tools for the email and for the sharing the photos and some cloud tools also. So the person who is not technical also using the Google Photos, Google Drive, and OneDrive. So I just give them the example that if you are using Google Drive and you know all the features of that which you are using, how to share the files, how to upload those, and if you want to update that thing and go to the another tool like the OneDrive or Dropbox, so you will find lots of advantage, lots of feature you will get. So what needs a person, he wants to enhance their experience in the technology, like if I'm using a Google Drive, how can I access that? I can access with the Android mobile easily because it has the Google services, like, so I'll just give them the example as they are using the technology in their daily life, so it'll be more easy to understand.
So what is a metaphor you could give an object that you could encapsulate all of that in one word, right? That has the essence of what you just described. And folks, if you have suggestions in the chat box, would love to hear a suggestion. What is one word that could describe what a data migration engineer does? So Lokesh, what is the most one important action that you do in your job?
Yes, we provide the latest feature to the client which they require in their field for their businesses. So suppose they are using old version of application which has the less functions for running their businesses. So we provide them the latest feature and enhance their business processes with the help of the new tool.
Great.
So we migrate
So
those.
so let me ask you, what is something in regular life, in normal life, not in technical life, that provides a similar ability, like the latest information, right? When people are just out in their lives, where do they get the latest information? Is it the news, or what is a thing that gets them late information? Where do they find that out? All right. So, Lakesh, what I'm trying to get to is there is an essence of what you do, right? And some people, what they do, it's more like they're an investigator. They investigate stuff. Some people, they're more telling people stuff. So yours could be, and I'm not saying you use this, it could be like you're like a reporter, right? You act like a reporter for systems so that they know what the latest thing is or the people who are using it, right? It could say that you're like a doctor, right? There are some people in software, their job is to fix things, right? So you're like, I'm like a code doctor, right? Because what happens is when you describe something using a everyday concept, which everyone understands, right? And everyone understands doctor. Not everyone understands data migration engineer, right? Everyone understands pipeline. Someone said pipeline, right? Everyone understands like this pipeline, things go through it. It's like a tunnel, right? Data plumbers, that's another good one. You're a data plumber, right? What understands you're getting in there, you're underneath everything. People understand that concept. So this is really important. And Kinjal asked me to talk about this. Sometimes you're talking with non-technical people. You're talking with salespeople, marketing people. And unfortunately for you, they do not speak your language, right? Your peers speak your language. So for you to say, and it's not a criticism of any of you, for you to say, blah, 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 and this is what we do, blah, 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 blah. I'm telling you, they've fallen asleep because not because they disrespect you, because they don't understand. They can't understand that. But if you start with a foundation, with a framework and say, look, you know, like what your plumber does, right? That's kind of what I do with our data. And they're like, oh, like a plumber. Okay. And then now you can say, you know how a plumber, there's something stuck. When something's stuck in our data, this is what I do, right? I go in and this is how I clear it. And now they're like, oh, okay. So as a plumber, you go underneath the code or the software, and then you also unstick things, right? And maybe there are other things that you do in the data pipeline. And you say, you know, like a plumber, right? Sometimes they need to put a snake, you know, like a plunger, and they need to force something to happen. That's what I do when I run a diagnostic, right? Or I you know, throw something into production to see if it breaks or in staging, right? So now they can kind of understand like, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying, right? Because you've anchored it to something real, to something that they don't need expertise to understand. And frankly, it may be not unfair, but it may be difficult to expect them to all understand it at the same level. Some people will, but again, we're back to 100%, right? You're like, Lakesh, that was a beautiful explanation. Everything you said was perfect. If I don't understand it though, is it helping you, Lakesh?
No.
No, right? So you can say the perfect thing and not get what you want, not be understood, or you can think, okay, what does Joe need? He needs a metaphor, or he needs an additional background, or this is what I can give him. So a metaphor is a really powerful way. And we do this all the time in life, right? Like you say, like, you know, oh, I feel like I've been, you know, beaten up, or, you know, I feel like, you know, you say things about the way you feel and you use, you know, metaphors, or like, oh, you know, that player, they were like a tiger, right? They weren't actually a tiger, right? But you mean like they were aggressive and they were like really taking charge. So people can see, oh, okay, like tiger. Or, oh, you know, that person, they're like a cat. They're like a pussy cat. They're very timid. They're like a kitten, right? So that metaphor has a lot of meaning and can help accelerate understanding versus a perfect explanation, but it doesn't really work because that person can't receive it. So everyone give Lakesh a round of applause. Thank you for that wonderful explanation, and everyone for suggesting metaphors. We are going to wrap up with our last tool, and I like to call this takeout ambiguity. Raise your hand and give me a thumbs up if you'd like to order food out, like takeout, right? And you either pick it up or it comes to your house. Let me see if you like that. Do you like that? Yeah, I love it. We love it. Thai food, Chinese food, Italian food, Indian food, Greek food. We love takeout, right? What's better? And then no dishes, right? You just kind of throw everything out. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, right? When you order something and they send you the wrong order, how does that make you feel? Like if you wanted like dish A and they sent you dish B, which is not the dish you like, right? It's kind of annoying and upsetting. So what do we do, or what can we do? And I do this a lot when I dial in my order. I say, I'd like a pepperoni pizza. I'd like some large calamari. I'd like 2 house salads and a tiramisu, right? What can I do to make sure that they get my order right? Right?
Just repeat the order.
Exactly. Exactly. You say, oh, can you repeat the order? And guess what? Sometimes they get it wrong, right? Sometimes they said 3 instead of 2, or they put large, or you ask for like something on the side and they don't mention that. And they're like, no, you know, we have allergies. I need this sauce to be on the side or the dressing to be on the side, right? So by asking people to repeat what you said, so you might do this at work. Say, this is what I need you to do. And then the person says, okay, right? But it's complicated and you want to be sure they get it right. Or maybe it's your first time working together with them. It's a great way to say, let me just make sure we're on the same page. Can you repeat back what you heard from me? And then they repeat it back. And sometimes it's totally right. And you're like, go. And sometimes you're like, well, that's not actually what I meant. Let me be a little bit more clear. And it's always about you being more clear. It's not about them understanding. They're just going to understand what they understand. But you have to 100%, you have to keep making it clear so they can do the right thing. You're helping yourself by helping them. And it works the other way too, when you're listening. So Kinjal says to me when we're getting ready for this, she says, Joe, I want you to talk about these things, right? And she gives me 6 things. It's a lot of things, right? And I teach a lot of people a lot of different things. I say, Kinjal, so what I'm hearing from you is, I want you to talk about the importance of communication with non-technical people. You want me to talk about, managing people better, blah, 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 blah. And I give her back the 6 things. Hopefully I get 6 of them right. Maybe I only get 5. Maybe by asking, she realizes she doesn't want 6. She left something out. She wants 7. And she adds it. So what I like to say is, for minds to meet, it helps to repeat, right? It just takes an extra second for you to repeat back what you think you heard, and to ask them to repeat back what they think you said. And I do this all the time, right? At work, I say, someone says, Joe, this is why we should do this. And I say, okay, so let me make sure I understand what you're saying. You think we should do this because, and then guess what? A lot of times, maybe not 50%, but a lot of times they're like, no. That's not what I meant, right? How much better is that to learn that now versus I just spent a week trying to fix something and it wasn't what they wanted me to do. Or you asked someone to do something and, you didn't ask them to repeat and they thought they understood. You thought they spent a week, they come back and you're like, this is horrible. I can't use this. They're like, Joe, I did what you asked me to do. So that's why I always like to say, for minds to meet, it helps to repeat. Y'all are very lucky that you have leaders who are investing in your development and professional development. And I commend all of you for your attention and participation. And I hope this will really improve your results at home, with your friends, and definitely at work. So give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you, everyone.
I had a quick question.
Yeah, sure. If we have time. Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering, what part, if any, does empathy play in your communications?
That's a great question, Samantha. It plays a huge part, right? It's all about feelings and people feeling that they are seen. That's how I would put it. with empathy. Do I feel seen? And if I feel seen by someone, I can do lots of stuff with them. I can sacrifice. I can bring my best ideas. I can be brave if I feel seen. And empathy helps people feel seen. And if I don't feel seen, I'm not going to take a lot of risks. And I'm not going to work particularly hard, sorry to say, if I don't feel seen by you. So empathy is huge, and it is what makes the connection possible. Does that help?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it for now, Kinjal. Thank you. Thank you so much.